This is the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what's going on this week, what happened last week. I'm here with my partner via Zoom, Dan Youngblood. And Dan, tonight we've got regional semifinal action to talk about, and we've got Cisco head football coach Kevin Stennett joining us as a special guest.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to Coach Stennett about what his team's doing right now. You got to see them a couple of weeks ago in that lopsided win they had over San Saba, and really that started them on quite a path. They've played really, really well since then. I saw them the following week against Stanford in their playoff opener. Last week they have a lopsided win over Olton. They're just playing really, really well right now. This Lobos team is really kind of hit its stride. And all of a sudden looks like it might be a region threat for a post, which I think a lot of people may not quite have expected at the beginning of the season. So Cisco's playing at an exceptionally high level, and I'm just excited to talk to Coach Stennett about just kind of what he's seen from his team, because I think you and I were both very impressed the last time we saw him.
Yeah, they've got Hawley this week, and that's going to be a knockdown, drag-out trench war. That's going to be a fun one to watch. Tough matchup there for both ball clubs. But before we jump into this week's show, we need to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stanford and Abilene. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. And with that, it's about time to jump into this week's show. We're going to talk about, first off, we're going to talk about last week's area round games, and then we're going to jump into this week's regional semifinal action. We're down to 9 teams, big country wide. We've got 6 11-man teams still alive. We've got 3 6-man teams still alive, which is pretty much the usual total going into Thanksgiving weekend for the area. We've had more, we've had less. It's about average.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the one thing that makes this year a little bit unique, obviously, is that our big schools, Abilene High, Cooper, and Wiley, are still finishing up their regular season. So it looks like all 3 of them have a pretty good opportunity of making the playoffs. Cooper's obviously already in. They're going to win their district. Abilene High clinched last week, and then Wiley's got a chance to clinch in the final week of the regular season. But of those who are already in the playoffs of the big country schools that we've been talking about, yeah, I think you're pretty much spot on. This is probably a pretty typical contingent. And looking at what we got left, we've got 6 really good quality football teams. I think these are probably 6 of the teams we kind of expected to be in this position. So it should be a really fun week of playoff games. And there's a lot to talk about this week. And obviously in 2 cases, we've got big country teams versus big country teams. So we're guaranteed to get at least 2 teams to next week as well. So it should be a very fun week of playoff action.
All right, let's just jump into last week's area round action. Dan, you did not go to a game last week, and I'll go ahead and let you break the bad news to everybody.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was in COVID quarantine and have been since last weekend. So it's been a tough week of kind of some illness and some just kind of feeling a little bit crummy lately. But fortunately, I'm on kind of the downside of that. Finally, I'm feeling better. And I'm excited to be able to get back at it this week. My quarantine ends Thursday, so I've got a chance to cover a game Friday, and I'm excited about that. It was obviously tough to miss a game last week, particularly given that we had the big Cooper Azle game last week. That was one I kind of wanted to see, so that was tough to miss. But I'm excited to get back at it, and I'm feeling better, and I'm excited about that as well. So obviously it's been tough. The quarantine's not fun. I can say that from experience. I know you can as well. That is a bored time, and it's a kind of an isolating time. But I feel better, and I'm excited to get back at it and get back on the road as soon as I'm able to.
Well, it's good to have you back up and going. Let's take a look at last week's scores. First off, we'll start at the 6-man level. Just for our area ball clubs in Region 3, 1A, D2, 6-man, Strawn with a 44-22 win over Throckmorton. And we expected that one to go the distance, Dan, and it did. And then Fennendale over Gordon 60-20. Now, Strawn will meet Fennendale. That's going to be 6:30 p.m. Friday in Italy, and that's Italy, Texas.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go that far for that one.
And in Region 4, 1A, D1, May coming away with a 62-16 win over Jonesboro, Dan, and that's a very good Jonesboro team that May eliminated. The Tigers will now advance to face Lakey. That's going to be at 6 p.m. Friday in Ozona. Now, I'm told by my spouse that it's Lakey. It's not Leaky. So we got to get this right. So it's Lakey, according to my spouse.
If Crystal says it, I believe it.
There you go.
Moving to Region 2, 1A Division 1, we had Westbrook defeat Garden City 46-0, setting up a huge matchup for the region championship. Westbrook at 10-1 versus Sterling City 11-0. That one is at 5 p.m. Saturday in Sea City. And that's a big, big game for Westbrook.
That's huge.
A phenomenal season so far.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually a rematch. Sterling City is the only loss on that Westbrook team's ledger this year. So this is a big rematch for a regional championship. That's going to be at Sea City, Friday or Saturday rather, 5 p.m. That's going to be worth going to see right there.
The first matchup was a great one. That was a really close game. So this should be another thriller. So it should be fun.
And with that, it's time to take a look at last week's area round games. At the 11-man level, Class 2A, Dan, Cisco with a big 46-15 win over Olton. Not entirely unexpected. That was played in Colorado City. Hunter Long, again, playing very well. Threw for 210 yards, rushed for 101, accounted for 5 touchdowns. The kid's on fire right now.
Yeah, I mean, Cisco, between Hunter Long and Jared Fisher, that's become really one of the best 1-2 punches in the area. I mean, you've got a young quarterback who can both run and throw the football, and then you've got Jared Fisher, who's a really explosive running back. That offense is just really firing on all cylinders right now, and they showed it again last week against Alton.
All right, also from our area in Class 2A D1, San Saba saw its season come to a close with a 49-35 loss to a very explosive Panhandle team. Panhandle, 591 yards in total offense, Dan, but they've been doing that to just about everybody they played all year.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a really, really good offense. We saw that early in the season when they played Eastland, and Eastland got into the 90s. They got into the 70s, and it was one of the more crazy games we've had all year. But no shame there. Obviously, San Saba had a great season. I know it didn't end the way they wanted it to, but they were competitive against a really good Panhandle team, and unfortunately their season just had to come to an end.
All right, elsewhere in this region, Post eliminates Anson 61-6. And we knew Anson was a solid football team, so that really speaks volumes about how good this Post team is, Dan. 513 yards in total offense, and they rushed for 395.
Yeah, and that was an Anson defense that was playing really well coming into that game. So I think that just shows more than anything, I think that just shows you how good this Post team is. I don't think that says a whole lot about Anson, because I think you and I both feel that Anson had a very good football team on both sides of the football. Unfortunately, they were just a little overmatched in that one, but I think you just got to give credit to Post. That's a great football team.
All right, and finally, Hawley with a 34-20 win over Sundown. That was played out in Big Spring at a game that I attended. And really, that came down to 2 things. Big plays for Hawley in the first half, using their speed. They did have a speed advantage over Sundown. There was no question about that once the game got started. And then big defensive stops in the second half, creating some turnovers and a bad punt snap. That was a key play in that ball game. Hawley just outplayed them, out-executed them, and made those few key plays to win the game.
Yeah, and I think part of it comes down to the fact that Hawley, it's kind of crazy to say this given that program's recent history, but I think Hawley's just gotten into a position where they're used to playing in this time of year, and that they're more comfortable in these games than a lot of teams in this region are, which is, I think, a huge credit to what Coach Abels has built with that program. I mean, to the fact that Hawley can bring a young team and still get back to the third round with a win over a team like that Sundown team, just a huge credit to Hawley. It's a very good win for them and another great season for that program.
All right, now we're going to drop down to Class 2A D2. The Hamlin Pied Pipers are still alive. They are now 11-0. They advanced with a 48-14 win over Petrolia, rolling up 239 yards passing and 150 rushing. And Dan, we were worried about that Piper offense getting a little rusty because they went about a 3 or 4 week period with only one ball game, and it kind of hurt them offensively. But now it looks like they're starting to find their sea legs again.
Yeah, and I think this is a team that's been so good defensively all year. They haven't needed to put up a bunch of points. I think in some games you've kind of seen more workmanlike efforts than where they haven't really needed to go out and put up a ton of points. But I think this game against Petrolia shows that when they need to score points, they still can. This Hamlin team is still very, very dangerous and still very much a force to be reckoned with. And
finally, also in D2, we got another ball club that's still alive. The Albany Lions, as usual, are still alive. They advanced with a 56-22 win over Rawls. And Dan, the big key in this ball game, this is another one that I attended. It was a Thursday night game up in Snyder. They were able to get quick defensive stops early. Rawls they're very good with the slot T offense. And, Albany was able to force 3 and outs quickly and did not allow them to get into a rhythm early. Got up on them, and as you know, with the slot T, that offense is not designed to come from behind.
No, and I think another thing about that matchup too is you're starting to see that this Albany offense has some explosion itself. They've got a lot of weapons, both in the running game and the passing game. They've got really good receivers. That's become a very good offense, and if they're able to get a 2 or 3 score lead on you, that's a tough team to come back on. So a big win there for Albany sets up a big matchup with Windthorst this week, and and gives us an opportunity if things fall right, where we could get a Hamlin-Albany rematch next week. So we'll see if they can, if those teams can make that happen.
All right, let's jump up to Class 3A. Jim Ned advances with a 31-14 win over a very good Dalhart ball club. This was a better performance for Jim Ned in the area round that we saw in the bi-district round. They played really well, and again, Xavier Wishart has shown himself to be one of the biggest weapons in the big country, rushing for 131 yards and 2 scores in that ballgame.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They didn't play as well as I know they wanted to in the bi-district round. I think this was a really nice bounce-back performance, the kind they needed, I think, going into a game this week against Brock. I think they needed kind of a little bit of a confidence boost and a pick-me-up, and they got it this week, and that sets up a huge matchup this week against Brock. So a big win for Jim Ned, impressive showing against Dalhart.
All right, elsewhere in this region, we lost the Wall Hawks, Dan. They fall 28-27 to Bushland in overtime. That was the second straight overtime game for the Hawks in postseason. They eliminated Boyd in bi-district in overtime, and they fall 28-27 in overtime to a very explosive, very good Bushland team. Coleman Janelle hit Cash Bradley with a 2-point conversion pass in overtime to lift them to that 1-point win.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree this is just where you kind of just saw Wall's luck run out just a little bit. But that was a really good football team. I think they showed that the week prior against Boyd, which was also a good football team that they were able to beat in overtime. This week, Bushland just made one more play, and that, like you said, is a very good Bushland team, a team that has improved just a ton since their early season loss to Brock. And Wall was right there. They had their opportunity and unfortunately just couldn't quite pull that one out. But a great game, and no shame in ending your season in that way against that Bushland team.
All right, elsewhere, we got the Brock Eagles advancing as expected with a big 69-34 win over Denver City, and it really wasn't that close, Dan. The Eagles built up a 49-0 lead at the break and finished with over 606 yards in total offense, and that's with it set in cruise control in the second half.
And one thing you're starting to see with Brock, and you kind of see this every year, is you're starting to see some of those new names creep into box scores, guys who are going to be stars down the road, guys, JV call-ups who are getting opportunities to play in these playoff games. And that's part of what makes this program so darn good is it's just a cycle. I mean, these kids get to play in these situations, get this experience, and then in future years they're ready to be those major contributors. But just a huge win for Brock, a very dominant performance in what's been a really dominant season for the Eagles.
All right, now we're going to drop to Class 3A Division II. We lost the Ballinger Bearcats, and they closed a great season at 10-2. Kind of ending on a sad note with a 35-7 loss to Spearman. But let's face it, this is a great Spearman team that has been doing this to people all year long. No shame in dropping your final ball game to Spearman.
No, and I think they would have probably liked to have played better and been more competitive in that game than they were. But I think that the main thing is what you just said. This is a really, really good Spearman team. If you don't play up to your absolute best level, there's a chance that this can happen to you. And that, unfortunately, just what happened. But that, to me, doesn't take anything away from the season that Ballinger had. The Bearcats had a great season under Coach Chuck Lipsey. That was a really good football team. They just had a tough finish to the season.
A big 21-0 second quarter run blew that ball game open for Spearman, and the game was tight until that point. And then 3 straight touchdowns in the second quarter blew the ball game open.
And in that same region, out of that same district, kind of a similar story with Bangs, which had a phenomenal season this year, end with a tough 56-13 loss to an elite Canadian team. So I don't think we were necessarily surprised by that outcome there. That's just a really good and tough assignment to face in the area round.
Well, yeah, this is the sort of thing that we've seen Canadian do to people for years. There is no shame in losing, by a lopsided margin. The Canadian, they had nearly 600 yards in total offense in that ball game. But nonetheless, this is still probably the best Bangs team that we have seen in 7 to 8, 9 years. I'm guessing about 7 or 8 years. And Kyle Maxfield is to be congratulated. He's done a whale of a job in turning around a struggling program. That's a good team he's put together.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what some of those guys that have been part of that program for a while have done, Ethan Sanchez in particular has been a guy that's done so much for them. I think you got to give a guy like that credit for helping put this program on the footing it's on now. And I think that's going to help those future classes come and just continue to build on that. But you look at what Sanchez did this year, what Ethan Cortez did taking over the quarterback spot. I think that there's a lot of positives right now in Bangs, Texas, and I think that those guys deserve a lot of credit. And I think that this program will continue to improve. And Coach Maxfield, again, like you said, just one of the big turnarounds in this entire area. So a lot of credit due there, even though they didn't finish the season, I'm sure, the way they wanted to.
And finally, in Region 2, Class 3A, D2, the Eastland Mavs eliminated Bells 49-22, and they did it sort of in an uncharacteristic fashion. They pounded out 315 yards rushing and got 6 touchdowns on the ground. Brandon Fielding rushed for 176 yards and 3 scores in that ball game. They went to the ground. I imagine Bells probably showed a 5-man box, and they just took advantage of it. That's my guess as to what happened.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that this Eastland offense is showing that you really can't take – I mean, if you try to take the passing game away, they're going to run straight over you, and vice versa. I mean, they've got that capability offensively. They are that deep and talented on the offensive end that you're going to have to play really a stellar game to slow them down, and Bells wasn't able to do that. And you and I both kind of said that if there's a team out there that can shut down this Eastland offense, that we'd like to see it. And so far, no one in the playoffs has been able to do that.
I'm telling you, we may very well see Eastland take the region this year. I think with the way they're playing offensively right now.
Yeah.
The way they're playing offensively.
And I think they've made some nice strides defensively as well during this winning streak. They've really kind of figured some things out on that side of the ball as well. So right now, the way Eastland's playing, it took them a little while to get to this point, but I think they're really playing the brand of football we all thought they were capable of right now.
All right, now let's jump up to Class 4A. Dan, we lost the Big Spring Steers 56-0. Losers to Springtown, giving up 483 yards in total offense to the Porcupines, but still to be congratulated. To get into the area round after the struggles that they've had in recent years, that's a step forward.
Yeah, I mean, this loss, I think we both kind of expected. This Springtown team's really, really good. And then Big Spring kind of compounded things with 6 turnovers, and it kind of took him out of the game from the start. But the big thing to me is that this Big Spring team finishes its season at 5-4, its first winning record since 2014, a big step forward for the Steers under Coach Cannon McWilliams. This is something they can definitely build on going forward.
All right, now we're going to jump over to Region 2, Division 1. Argyle with a 56-27 win over Stephenville. They're top-ranked Argyle for a reason. It really wasn't a surprise to see Stephenville fall to these guys. And right now, I think you'd have to look at Argyle as the odds-on favorite to win the state championship, racking up over 500 yards in their win over Stephenville on Friday.
Yeah, no question. This Argyle team, I think, is pretty well the clear favorite in that classification. One thing I think was important here is that Stephenville for a quarter hung right with them, and then in the second and third quarters, Argyle outscored the Yellow Jackets 35-7 to pull away. But again, we saw talk about a lot. There's no shame in losing to this Argyle team. This Argyle team has done this to just about everybody they've played this year, and Stephenville hung in there. They continued to fight and continued to score into the fourth quarter. So credit to that Stephenville team, which had a very strong offense this year, and they put together, I thought, a strong season. They just weren't quite on that level, but a good showing nonetheless, in my opinion.
And finally, in Region 1 4A D2, Dan, we had to say goodbye to the Sweetwater Mustangs, falling to Celina 37-22. We were worried about Celina because we knew that the record was misleading. They had been facing a lot of very tough football teams, and that's just the nature of the beast. Celina is typically one of those ball clubs you're going to have to get through to win a regional title. Sweetwater finishes at 8-2, a great season, and Coach McGee's got the Mustangs back.
Yeah, I think one thing that's worth pointing out is that this game was probably closer than that 15-point final margin might indicate. This was a game that was 16-14 at half. Celina was able to pull away with a 14-0 run through the third quarter. But it was a game that really, I think, at different points could have gone different. It could have gone a different way had things played out just a little bit differently. Sweetwater had some chances where they maybe left some points on the field that they probably would have liked another chance at. But those are the types of things that happen. And I think that if you're Sweetwater, I don't think you're feeling bad about the season you had or any of those things. This is a Sweetwater team that made huge strides this year, winning their district. Getting to 8-1 going into this area round game, and a team that again just continues to pour on points and just continues to build one of the area's best offenses. So I think that Coach McGee and his squad have a lot to be proud of with what they did this season, and I think that that's a program again that the trajectory is pointed straight up for the future. So that's going to be a fun program to follow next year as well.
And with that, it's time to jump ahead and take a look at this week's regional semifinal ball games. But before we do that, we want to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts free of charge throughout the school year. Also, for the love of the game broadcasting, our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of Classic Country 1330 AM out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 KATX FM out of Eastland, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and 98.5 KWBY FM out of Ranger. That is for the love of the game broadcasting. And Phil Hill of the Albany Realtors Group, big supporter of local athletics. If you're in the market, give him a call at 325-669-5153 or visit his website at philhillproperties.com. And finally, Jack's Road Boring in Snyder, dirt sales and services. With experience and service you can count on, Larry Green is the man to call out there. Give him a shout at 325-575-8004. That's Jack's Road Boring in Snyder. And with that, it's time to take a look at this week's regional semifinals. We'll start in Class 2A D2. We've got the Albany Lions at 10-1. They're going to be squaring off against Windthorst at 10-1. That's going to be 2 p.m. Friday in Breckenridge. That's going to be a lights-out football game. Windthorst was good enough to give Hamlin a 14-0 go there earlier in the season. That's the best ball game that Hamlin has faced this year. Windthorst very sound defensively, facing off with an Albany team that's showing some nice balance. They're running the football well, they're throwing the football well. This is going to be a great ball game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be the biggest challenge that Albany has faced since they played Hamlin in the non-district. And obviously that game didn't go as well as they wanted it to. But this is a different Albany team, in my opinion, than the one that faced Hamlin early in the season. This is a team that's kind of found its identity, particularly on offense, where they have become a very good, balanced, explosive offense. And then defensively, they played really well all year, Albany has. So I think this is going to be a fun matchup. I think it's going to be a tough one. Windthorst is obviously a very, very good football team. But if Albany can play their best football game, I think they've got a shot to get to advance past this one and get a rematch with Hamlin. But it's not going to be easy by any stretch. All
right, in the other semifinal, we've got Hamlin at 11-0 facing Munster at 9-3. That is a Hamlin football team without Jackson Cepeda. That's a valuable two-way football player facing one of the regional powers in Munster. It's going to be an interesting ball game. One thing, though, one positive thing for the Pipers is they started showing some offensive life last week. And they were, like we said earlier, they were a little bit rusty there after, missing some games because of COVID. But it looks like they're starting to get back on track, and that'll help. We know they're sound defensively.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is that the big thing for this Hamlin team is really no one has found consistent offense against this Hamlin defense. So that's obviously a nice safety net to have there. If Hamlin can get the offense going, they've got to feel pretty good about their chances of beating just about anyone in this region. But this isn't going to be an easy game either. This is a really good Munster team. This team beat a very quality Santo team, beat them 32-6 in the bi-district round. And this will be a challenge for Hamlin. I think if Hamlin goes out and plays its best game, it will advance and we'll get either a rematch with Windthorst or a rematch with Albany. But they will need to play well if they want to get through Munster this week.
All right, now we're going to move to Region 1, Class 2A D1. We've got the Hawley Bearcats at 10-2 against Cisco at 9-3. And Dan, this is one of those classic trench warfare type ball games. Hawley, big, rough, tough, and physical, facing a Cisco team that really wrote the book on that style of football. So for people that like old style football, this is going to be the game to go to.
Yeah, I think this is a huge matchup. This is going to be a really fun one for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned. But the thing I love about this matchup is you've got a program in Cisco that has been in these situations for more than a decade now, obviously with what Coach West did there before Coach Stennett took over. And then you've got a Hawley program that under Mitch Abels has also become accustomed to playing in these third-round type playoff games. So I think it's fun in that aspect. And you've got two programs that expect to be here and expect to win these types of games. So I think that part's going to be fun. If you look at kind of how both teams come into this one, just the way Cisco's playing, to me, that makes them a really scary team. But I've got to give Hawley a lot of credit, too, for the way they were able to beat Sundown last week to advance to this round. So I think this should be a fun game between two teams that are going to be very physical, that are going to love that that smash mouth type football. This, like you said, is going to be a very fun game for people who like physical smash mouth football.
All right, now we're going to move on to Class 3A, Region 2. Our one ball club that's still alive in that region is Eastland. They are 9-3. They're going to be squaring off with Holiday, 11-1. That's 7 p.m. Friday in Graham. That's going to be one of those contrast and styles ball game. Holiday is going to want to keep the football and kill the clock as much as possible. That Eastland team is going to want to get out and run, spread the field, and get as many possessions as possible. I'm going to let it ride. I'm going to stick with Eastland. I tell you what, the day that somebody stops that Eastland offense is the day that I miss my pick. I'm sticking with Eastland until somebody stops them.
And I'm kind of the same way. I think this Holiday team is very, very good. They're coming off a dominant win over Sadler S&S Consolidated, and Holiday's had a great season. But I just think the way that this Eastland team is playing right now offensively, I'm just having trouble picking against them. I mean, the way that they're putting points on the board, like I said before, until somebody can prove that they can stop them, I'm not going to believe that someone will. So I'm going to go with Eastland as well. But I do expect this to be a really good competitive football game. This is a very good Holiday team, one that, again, is kind of used to these types of situations. So it should be a fun game. But I'm rolling with Baron Morton as well. I really like what this Eastland team is doing.
All right, now we're going to run over to Region 1, 3A D1. We've got two ball clubs that are still alive, and this is one of those marquee matchups for us. Two teams that we cover in our coverage area. Jim Nett at 10-1, squaring off against a top-ranked Brock team that's 12-0, 2 p.m. Friday in Stephenville. Dan, the way I'm looking at this ball game, I think it's going to be really crucial for Jim Nett not to get involved in a track meet with this Brock team that's so explosive offensively. I think they've got to get Wishart involved and kill some clock, limit some possessions, and win that turnover battle if they're going to knock these guys off.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that if Jim Ned's going to win this one, it's going to happen. It's going to have to happen on the defensive side of the football, where they've been so physical and so good all year long. The problem is they have not faced an offense like this Brock Eagles team yet. So that's going to be the challenge. You're going to have to find a way to get this Brock team into a 4-quarter game, which to date, Iowa Park is the only team that has done that. So we'll see if Jim Ned can join that list. If they can, who knows? This is a Jim Ned team that has shown the ability to win close games. It's been very good in those late tight situations, but you got to get there against this Brock team. And to me, that's the challenge: is can you get this team into the fourth quarter with a chance to beat them? And we'll just see. This is going to be a really tough game. This is a Brock team that has buried just about everyone it's played all year long. If you're going to get them into the fourth quarter, you've got to find a way to slow them down, and you've got to find a way to take advantage of the possessions that you do get. And to me, that's the challenge for Jim Ned, is can they do those things? And I'm excited to see if they can. This is kind of one of those matchups that you and I have been looking forward to for a long time. I think this is probably the biggest game that Jim Ned has played since Colt McCoy was quarterbacking them. So this is a huge game for that community, a huge game for that program, and it should be a fun one.
What makes Brock so tough is that pressure defense that they put on you, and they really sell out to not let you run the football. So it's almost like they force you into this higher tempo that you don't want to play against them with that offense as explosive as they are. So, I mean, you got to find a way to maybe, move the chains a little bit and kill some clock. And then if you can get behind that pressure defense and get some big plays, that's nice. Yeah, and occasionally they've been known to give up a few big plays.
Yeah, and I think you need to get big plays. That's what Iowa Park was able to do to stay in the game, was they were able to get big plays early and then got a couple late to get back into it. I think that Jim Ned's going to have to find a way to score when it has the opportunity to do so. And I think your big plays are probably your best bet at doing that, just because this defense makes it hard to get a sustained running game against. But
it's hard to drive 80 yards and 15 plays against that defense.
Yeah, it really is.
It's almost impossible to do that.
Brock does so many things on both sides of the football that are matchup nightmare type deal. But this Jim Ned team, the thing I do like about it is this is a very physical Jim Ned team. It's a very tough-minded Jim Ned football team. Yes. They're not going to be intimidated. I like that aspect of it.
Nope.
But they're going to have to find ways to execute, and that's the big question: is can they execute well enough to stay in a game for 4 quarters against this Brock team?
Yeah, this Jim Ned ball club is tough mentally. They're not going to show up, intimidated. They're going to show up thinking they can win the ball game. They're going to.
Yeah, and they've got a really tough-minded young quarterback in Tate Yardley, a kid who's a winner as well. So I think that they've got some things going for them. It's just this is a matchup unlike any they've faced this year. The one thing I do like is Jim Ned has played a tough schedule to get to this point, but this will be the biggest challenge they've faced so far, and we'll see if they can stand up to it. But I'm excited about this matchup. I know that you are as well.
Absolutely. If you're going to get to Arlington, the road to Arlington goes through Brock. You're going to have to beat them sooner or later. So we knew this was going to transpire for Jim Ned. So there you go. And with that, it's just about time to bring on Cisco head football coach Kevin Stennett. Dan, you've got a chance to see Cisco recently, so have I. And there's no watching them without being impressed with the offensive execution that we're seeing out of them now. It's they're really explosive, and most of it's coming on the ground. But you know what they're reminding me of is, they'll run 80-85% of the time, but when they do throw it, they're efficient with it and they hurt you.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this to you after I watched them play that Stanford game. is there are shades of what they're doing that do remind me of Brock. They're kind of a baby Brock, and like you said, that they're going to run, and do so explosively. But when they pass, they mean it. They have a chance to pop a big one here and there.
Yes.
And I love what I saw offensively. This is a team that is really, really dominating the line of scrimmage. And then they've got some playmakers both in the backfield and on the edges that can really hurt you. So I agree. I think that what I've seen from Coach Stennett, I've been very impressed by. I'm excited about this Cisco team. I'm excited about this game with Hawley. I think it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, when Cisco throws the football, they throw it with bad intentions. They're looking for 6 often when they throw the football.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. It's a fun team to follow.
All right, well, it's just about time to bring on Coach.
Go ahead and get him on.
And joining us now via Zoom, Cisco head football coach Kevin Stennett. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Coach, right off the bat, you've got a very tough Hawley football team ahead of you in the regional semifinals. I know you guys were out there scouting them the other night. What are your impressions of this ball club?
First thing that stands out is how well coached they are. They're very disciplined. Second thing is just how big they are. They've got some big, strong kids, and they're fast, and they're very athletic. And you add just good coaching and a disciplined team, they're very dangerous. We've got our work cut out for us.
Okay, I guess another factor too is the fact that they've been here. They're at the 2A level. They've been to these regional semifinals before, so they're experienced.
They are, and they're a young team, but they do have experience, and they just get after it. They're a very hard-nosed football team. They're extremely good.
All right, without tipping your hand too much, Coach, you don't want to tip your hand, obviously, but how do you beat these guys? What are the big keys for you?
You almost have to play perfect. I wish that's possible, but there's always going to be penalties and turnovers. We've got to limit those mistakes, limit the mental mistakes. We've been doing much better at that offensively, and we just need our defense to continue to do what they do. They've been playing very physical, and they fly around and get to the football.
And Coach, you kind of led me into this next question, and your team seems to be one that is really hitting its stride. You look at what y'all done really since that San Saba win, putting up huge yardage, huge point totals, playing well defensively. What have you seen from your team just in terms of peaking at the right time, and do you feel pretty good about where your team is right now?
I like where we're at, and it started after that preseason. It was a brutal preseason, but we learned a lot about our football team. Just every little mistake we can make, we made it in preseason. We took the time off that open week, and we really fixed those little things, and then we just got better every week in district. And that's all you could ask for out of a young team, is just get better every week. And I feel like we're doing that, and this is probably the best we're playing right now.
All right, Coach. Well, I've seen you guys a number of times this year, and I'm kind of liking what I see. I see kind of the Cisco of old. I see you guys under center a lot more in I formation looks. I see you hustling up the line of scrimmage and showing a quick split back look. It looks like Cisco from, say, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, and it's starting to feel like that. And if you watched us earlier in the year, we weren't the same team as we are right now. I feel like we really almost got back to some basics after that first 5 preseason games, but we kind of got back to some basics and just started doing what we've done at Cisco for so long. That's made us great, and you can really tell it's making a difference.
And Coach, you mentioned having a young team. I guess one of the positions where that's definitely been true is at the quarterback position, where you've got a sophomore in Hunter Long, and he just seems like a kid who's really matured and grown over the course of the season. What have you seen just in terms of that maturation process from him?
I've seen a kid that's gotten better every week, and so now we're 12 weeks in, and he's gotten better every week. There were some growing pains at first, and it was a young team. I feel like after those first 5 games, I really stopped using the word young team, because they just weren't. We threw them into the fire with that preseason, and I just kept, almost every interview and everything, I just kept saying, no, it's a young team. They're going to get better and all. I felt like I was making excuses for our lack of discipline and really not playing the brand of Lobo football that we're used to. So we kind of we just stopped using that term young team, and you just really started watching them mature, especially at the quarterback position.
And that actually leads me into the next question as well, is about that non-district schedule. I mean, you loaded up the schedule with just really tough, larger schools, a lot of cases, 3A D1s in a couple of cases. How important was it to get your team that exposure and that experience for what they're doing now?
It was great for us. My main concern was coming out healthy. For the most part, we did. But just to get in those games where you're playing 4 quarters and most of those games we were trailing or it was close. So to get your football team, especially, a group like we have, to get them in those battles and those tough 4-quarter games, that's everything. And hopefully it'll pay off down the road here in the playoffs.
Coach, dropping to Class 2A D1, what's the general impression of the level of competition you're seeing and around the community? Were they glad to see the drop, or did they kind of wish they had stayed at 3A because you're still winning at 3A when you did drop?
It was a great drop. That drop from 3A to 2A was great. We were definitely sick of being at the bottom of the barrel as far as numbers go in 3A. We were still competing extremely well, but you can tell the difference in numbers in the second half, in the third and fourth quarter. It's just a depth issue, and that's something that I feel like is helping us out as far as 2A goes. When you look across the sideline, and we obviously have way more numbers than a lot of teams, so that's big for us. And it was overall just great taking that drop.
Okay, and Coach, shifting gears just a little bit, what has been that challenge that you faced in your first year as a head coach? Coach, what are maybe some things you didn't expect to be challenges that have been?
COVID-19 would be one of them. There's just, and everybody's dealing with the same thing. There's no good way to navigate through this. So, first-year head coach or a 20-year head coach, there's no protocol or rule book on how to handle COVID-19, or there wasn't back then when it all started. So, yes, that was very challenging. And then just all the little things that I've watched Coach West do over the years and have to deal with. And there's a lot that I didn't expect, a lot more paperwork, obviously. But as far as football goes, he left me with a great staff. This staff's been together for an extremely long time. And Coach West used to say the program could run itself. And I really believe that because of the staff that he put together and the staff that he left me with.
And speaking of Coach West, obviously you've worked with and alongside him in different capacities before, but what's it been like in this new arrangement with him as the AD and you as the head coach?
It's been great. This is the best mood I've ever seen him in my life. He's definitely happy right now, stress-free, but I love having him right there by my side with any question I have. Probably that first month into football, I was probably calling him 5 or 6 times a day with questions, and he would get sick. He would just start answering his phone and say, "What do you want now?" But those are things I was learning. It was a learning process for me, but that's a great mentor and a great someone to have on your side whenever you need a question answered. And I feel like I'm not asking as many questions right now. I'm starting to figure it out a little bit.
Coach, you're coaching at your alma mater. Are you following the dream here?
I've just been here so long as an assistant. This is my first job. It's all I know. I played for Coach West. I love this town. It's a football town. So if you're going to coach football, this is the kind of place you want to be at. So just happy to be here, and I love this community and just the support we get from the community. It's great.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we're going to be keeping an eye on you. Good luck the rest of the way.
Well, appreciate it, and thanks for y'all support and all that y'all do for Big Country Sports, man. It's great to have y'all covering us, especially us small schools. We sure do appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Coach.
All right. Good night, sir. And that was Cisco head football coach Kevin Stennett. Dan, he's got that ball club looking, pretty dang good right now. It's starting to look like the Cisco of old. I think the drop to Class 2A D1 is making all the difference, because the numbers-wise, they were at a real disadvantage at Class 3A. Now I think we're starting to see them as a big fish in a little pond again.
Yeah, and I also think you're starting to see that schedule that they played in the non-district paying off, where they did play up so many times against some really high-quality Class 3A opponents. They played those games, were competitive in those, and then once they started playing their own classification, obviously you started kind of seeing the separation and kind of the ability that they have show through. So it's been fun watching what Coach Stennett's done this year. It's been fun watching this team grow, and I think that we're seeing that team peak at exactly the right time. So the big question now is can they take down a post and win a region championship and maybe get to a state championship game? The way they're playing, I wouldn't put it past them. It's obviously going to be a major challenge. This post team, as Anson learned last week, is very, very good. But I like the way the Cisco team's playing, and I'm excited to see what they can do going forward. I'm excited to see how this Hawley game shapes up. So it should be a really, really fun week this week, and I'm just excited to see what this Cisco team can do.
And with that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you that we have 3 separate subscription packages here at BigCountryPreps.com. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got an annual subscription, a 12-month deal where you knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country High School athletic coverage. Also, for those of you who watch our videos on YouTube, we ask you that you please hit the subscribe button. Most people watch via our website, and that's fine. But if you're a YouTuber and typically watch our videos on YouTube, we ask that you hit the subscribe button.
And we'd also like to remind you that if you ever see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, it is available for just $7. You can click on that small shopping cart icon to the bottom right, follow that prompt, and purchase as many of those as you would like. But if you've scrolled around the site, you've probably noticed we take a whole lot of photos. That's something that we really enjoy doing and something we're very proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.